Good afternoon. Live from Radio Row at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center for Super Bowl 58. I'm Roy Kessel with Sports Philanthropy Network, and we're very excited to have with us today Light Helmets, and represented by Nick Esayian and John Sarkisian. We're so happy that you're here. We love seeing this new technology. We love helping protect brains, and very excited to learn more about all this success and all this momentum that you've been building up. You've been telling me some of the stories. So, at first I want to just start and have you guys give the background and the passion and where this all came from.
Sure. We're in a pretty exciting space at the time. I mean, we're in 18 NFL locker rooms. The Lions just bought 24 helmets from us. The highest category of NFL helmets, recommended helmets, we're in that category. The number one Virginia Tech helmet for general position, number two overall. We've got about 16,000 helmets on heads around the United States. We have youth helmets, high school helmets, but the big focus has been for us is in the NFL and NCAA, because people at home want their kids wearing what they consider the best. And when they see it on Sunday, that's where they put that helmet. So we need to be there, even though youth helmets are a little bit different. But we're based in Carlsbad, California. And this all is a product of military technology and auto race technology. We purchased the assets of SG Helmets, which was Bill Simpson, the race pioneer, and
Correct.
Chip Ganassi, the mogul. And this went on for several years. I raced cars professionally, met Bill. Boris says the NASCAR guy kind of connected us. And then I went to a couple of my friends, John Sarkisian, Jimmy Edmonds. We have 3 Navy SEALs involved, the president of Havas Edge, former president of TD Securities, pooled our cash, and we're out there. So 13 patents, 14 doctors. If you look on any of the other competitive web pages, social media, there's not doctors leading the charge. And we thought it was important to have neurologists, trauma docs, orthopedics. Tal Davis was an orthopedic surgeon for the Chargers for many years. And these guys are not getting paid. They got a sprinkling of options, and they've shown up and helped us design, along with our engineering firm, which is part of the Department of Defense contractor pool, and a company called Collide that the NFL funded in Canada. So that's kind of the quick lay of the land. John, did I miss anything on that
No,
list?
I think you covered pretty well there,
Oh,
Nick.
although we're in Dick Shields Plate again, Academy, and Walmart, which is exciting, with youth helmets.
And John, how did you get involved with this? What was your background that connected you in with Nick and with Light Helmets?
Well, Roy, I've spent the last 15 years in the sports and athletic field. I built a company called Skills, which builds athletic training products for athletes to achieve their athletic goals. And I'm also an angel investor in these types of companies. I came in contact with Nick, learned about the product, learned about what they were doing, and said, hey, I want to see kids play safe football as safe as possible. And this is one of those solutions that'll help that happen.
Well, what always strikes me as interesting, right? We see how really only in the last dozen years that concussions and the brain health has taken on a prime focus. We did a study. I was running a company called Sports Brain, where we looked at the data, and there were basically over half of the teams in the league reported 3 or less concussions as recently as like 2010.
Sure.
And the numbers are staggering. We know that obviously can't be accurate in terms of what's going on. We've seen a lot of acceleration in new technology opportunities. But when you talk about Virginia Tech ratings, when you talk about the safety of the helmet, why isn't everybody wearing this helmet?
We're new, and industries are challenging in terms of making changes. Think about Tesla. I'm not saying that I'm Elon, but like any new technology, it takes time to adopt. It takes time to grow. And we purchased this company right before the pandemic, which was right before the pandemic in terms of timing. But one of the keys here is that these helmets are lighter. Traditional helmets weigh between 5 and 6 pounds for an NFL player. High school helmets, 5, low 5s. Our helmets weigh between 3 pounds and 3.5 pounds. So in an ADG impact or collision, that 3 pounds times ADG is 240 pounds, your cervical structures managing. And a lot of the impacts that we used to see in the 80s, 90s, 2000s of head-to-head impacts have been legislated out of the game. So you see all these head-to-ground impacts, the Matt Staffords, the Purdys, the Richardsons, and those you are never going to legislate out of the game because it's tackle football. So what can we do to reduce those impact, or the kinetic energy in those impacts is reducing the weight. The energy equation's half the mass times the velocity squared. Speed is speed in football, and we know that that's only going to, guys are only getting faster. But these head whip impact can be reduced with weight. So it's the reduction in weight. Now, in the NFL, we saw an 18% increase in concussions in 2022, similar in 2023. And the NFL is doing a great job with new testing. And we comply with all those tests and are in the top category. But we're even ahead of those by reducing weight. And youth helmets, the new standard for them is 3.5 pounds. We're the only ones that meet that standard, in meaning below that weight. So people are starting, even our competitors are starting to advertise, oh, our helmet's lighter. Well, it's still 25 or 30 or 40% heavier than ours. So you can only make the helmet so big. So you have to incorporate the geometry, the engineering, and the materials, and how they're combined, how they work together in a system to reduce those impacts and absorb impact, but also reduce fatigue and allow the player to perform and still be comfortable.
Well, I remember when I first met SG back at one of the AFCA shows, probably about 10 years ago, and was very impressed with looking at it. And they were just getting started. And so I'm happy to see that that technology has been picked up and continue to be implemented. And the challenge now, I think you said it yourself, right? It's getting awareness, getting that distribution, getting it on people's heads, because I think we just had Jeff Miller on. I know you were talking to him before we started this show. Getting that set of data for NFL level impacts, right, and NFL level speed, and being able to demonstrate the differential in safety and the differential in impacts and brain injuries with that weight, right? I think that's going to be good. Has he been able to give you any guidance in terms of what that next step would be able to get it into more NFL teams?
So the NFL's done a great job at developing a test. And, it takes a lot of time and a lot of data analytics to be able to make assumptions about how you should test helmets. And a quarterback takes different impacts than a wide receiver, than a kicker or a linebacker. Now, the test that's been in place has been a living test. Jeff's done a great job of continuing to migrate that forward. And now they're position specific helmets. They perform far differently. One result in the others, and we won't get into the statistics of that, but we know that the physicians are telling us weight matters. So we're applying that to our design. So we were tested in August of 2023, between when they normally test. The equipment managers were sent out a memo, and promptly we had 18 teams order these helmets, and they're in the locker room. Now we have almost all the teams that have ordered helmets going into next year. We have a new version coming out, and it's pretty exciting because, once you're on field there, people know the brand, they see the name. But people at home need to remember that their 10-year-old kid is not going to go 23 miles an hour like Tariq Hill and run into a defensive back that goes 21 miles an hour with a closing speed of 44 miles an hour. The only time they're going that fast is in mom's car or dad's car on the way to the practice. So wearing an NFL helmet that's stiff and designed for those impacts would be like driving an Indy car on the way to school. It's the wrong helmet for a young player. So the helmets should be sized and fit and selected based on the level of play, the child's weight, a whole variety of factors. And, we've seen helmets fail in some crazy weather conditions. And one of the things we do is our helmets are tested down to 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 below zero, all the way up to 140 degrees. There are no air bladders in here. It's not open pore foam. When it gets wet, it freezes. We take all that into consideration. That's not in any of the tests. So Jeff's been great in supporting us and advancing things. We're excited. We think we'll have between 75 and 125 NFL players in 2024 in the helmet. And we're already in 30 locker rooms in NCAA D1.
Well, that's an amazing growth in a short amount of time. I mean, when you look at the number of players that are out there in the market, right, for, with USA football numbers, and look at high school and college and obviously NFL. Um, Talk a little bit about the cost structure, right? Because one of the challenges at the youth sports level in particular is a lot of families struggle just to be able to afford the basic fees to play in a sport. Right now, we're adding all of this amazing technology, and we know just from historical data that many of the helmets need to be retired, need to be, recertified because they're not passing the safety test, and that's just with the regular helmets. So, how can we implement the cost structure and help those organizations get kids in these helmets?
So it's a great question, a great point, something we took into consideration in our youth helmet designs. Helmets are supposed to last 10 years and then they get aged out. The technology changes so quickly, you don't want to be wearing a 10-year-old helmet. So one of the things we did with all of our youth helmets is that they can be resized. So if mom or dad buys a helmet and it's $295 as opposed to buying a helmet that's $150, when they refurbish it, which they have to do every 2 years, they can simply get it resized. So there, it's really an investment over the career of that young player. So instead of buying 3 helmets and them having no value when you're done using them other than on your shelf, our helmet can be resized. And that sole issue has let us blow up. And that's why we're in Dick's, played against Shields. And we found such great customer base in the youth and in the high schools. So a high school doesn't need 250 helmets if they have 170 players because all those medium helmets that would normally sit on the shelves can be made a large. I don't know if I covered that well, but I think that's an important point.
Yeah, it really is. And when you think about where youth sports have been going, right? The competitive travel teams, all the costs are being borne by the parents. So we were very aware of that in developing this so that we can say, hey, you can buy a helmet for your kid to protect your kid's head, but you can keep it for 5, 6, 7 years and not have to replace it.
Yeah, and so when you looked at things, John, from a business perspective, right? Because you're investing into this, you've run other successful companies, right? One of the challenges in coming into this type of market is you've got very entrenched leaders that have been there for a long time, right? Shut Riddell and groups like that. So, what did you see in light helmets from a business perspective that said, "Aha, this is something that we can take to the next level with additional funding"?
Well, I'm going to preface what I'm going to say by saying, number one, I grew up in the Midwest. Number two, I believe most people who are in business, and especially in the youth sports business, are doing it for the right reasons. However, when you are companies that have been in business 100 years, you just have legacy costs. And you're not going to deliver the latest and greatest technology. And when I saw this technology and recognized that the tackle football helmet today weighs 5 to 6 pounds, it made no sense to me whatsoever. Understanding our technology and the reduction of weight made a ton of sense to me. And I was pretty comfortable knowing Nick's background, the team he put together. We're going to get the story out there and we're going to get these helmets on a lot of youth players' heads.
And that's really important. I live in Chicago now, grew up in Madison, so also a Midwestern guy, and um, sports are amazing, right? We want to get kids active, get kids involved. We just had the American Heart Association here, with Jeff Miller talking about the importance of being active and maintaining that lifestyle to be healthy. Keeping kids engaged in sports and but still safe, right? And I think that's one of the things that I love about this, from the first time I saw it, which was, kids want to play sports, right? Football is one of the most popular sports out there in this country, right? The NFL is still
Yeah.
the top of the ladder in terms of attention, right? You look at the TV broadcast, 19 of the top 20 each year are NFL
That's right.
games. It's incredible. And you see the energy here on Radio Row with 150 media outlets, right? It's incredible in terms of what's going on. But having that mechanism is so important in getting it in people's hands, and I want to commend you both for being part of that process. What I want to do is shift a little bit and ask you, you've worked really hard to get it to this point, right? My belief on where you are, you've gotten in, you mentioned the Lions, you mentioned some other teams, right? You're going to see that hockey stick effect where teammates are using it. They're their teammates are going to come and start asking questions. That helmet looks different. That helmet is lighter. You're not getting dinged up the way that I'm getting dinged up. So I think you're going to see great growth. But from an evolution perspective, what's the next step, right? You have this. We know helmet technology continues to evolve.
Sure.
I'm sure you have things in the works that are not ready for prime time, not ready for commercialization yet, but that R&D takes time to get them developed and to a point that you can implement them into these helmets.
Sure. So in the football space, we've got the next generation version of the Gladiator for high school players and youth players, and it'll be less than 3 pounds. Nobody's made a hard shell football helmet that's less than 3 pounds for decades. Um, that technology is 6 months away, and we're excited about that because you're really selling two different people when you sell a football helmet. The player, they want to know, does it look cool? Who else is wearing it? And do I play better? The person that's buying it wants to know, is it safer and how much does it cost? And is it sustainable? Meaning, can I get parts for it? Can I get it refurbished? So we're checking those boxes. We have a flag football headgear that Virginia Tech rated as number one. It had a perfect score of .00. No headgear in any category or helmet has ever done that. Same in soccer. And we have a hockey helmet on the drawing board. And then we're going to graduate to construction. We feel that the construction market's been underserved. And what do got people, men and women in construction, watch? They watch football. They watch hockey. They take their kids to flag football. And they're driving around a beautiful pickup truck. They've got expensive tools. They work hard. They got to wear a helmet all day long that's not comfortable and is a plastic bucket. Well, we're coming out with a helmet
With a
that
plastic strap.
with a plastic strap. Our helmet will incorporate some of the technologies and the cooling that we've got and lightweight, but also the utility of a bump or a ballistic helmet with some of the rail systems to attach accessories. So the company is going to grow quickly, and our goal isn't to be a football helmet company, although that's where we started. It's really to be a head, health, and safety company. And I think that's one of the things that attracted John. What attracted Jimmy Edmonds. We've got 6 special operations personnel, Navy SEALs, JTAC. We have somebody from the insurance industry that invested because they see that this area has been neglected. In football, there's 2 major competitors. And the reason that we've still got plastic helmets with steel face masks is because there's no competition. When you got a cell phone in 1989, your bill was $1,000 and the phone didn't work in all areas. Competition is what football's based on. It's what's built America. And that's what we're doing here. And guess what? The competitors now are talking about lightweight.
Well, and I love to hear the fact that you're expanding to other sports, and I'd like to kind of dive into those briefly. I know we were limited on time, but I'd love to hear more about hockey, more about soccer. We'll start with those two.
Sure. So the soccer headgear, people are like, gosh, we don't see people wearing a lot of headgear in soccer. The most concussed sport in the United States is women's soccer. You have undeveloped neck, and you have a lot of people playing. And 12 and under players can't head the ball anymore in most of the leagues anyway.
Right.
So wearing head protection just makes sense, especially if it keeps the player cool and it's lightweight. And I think our soccer headgear weighs 4 or 5 ounces. When you look at hockey, think about the different impacts that you have. You have the ice, you have the post, you have the glass, you have shoulder, stick, puck, all different velocities and masses. And they're also very small. So the technology and the space that you have to coalesce together, it's a challenge. But we work with major headgear manufacturers when they come out of one of their labs, and our friends from Clyde to come up with a prototype that we think is going to revolutionize that area in terms of material, weight, being cool, but also it's got to look slick. Otherwise, nobody wants to wear it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the impacts in hockey, right? I played hockey right up to the pandemic. I grew up playing soccer, so those are sports that are near and dear to me, right? There's almost no impact you're going to find anywhere in sports that's harder than the ice with the back of your head, right?
That's right.
And so having something that can protect you there, the sticks usually not that bad, but the post or the boards, especially if you get knocked into the base of the boards, get knocked off your feet. So those impacts are significant, and we see it. But as you said, shoulders, elbows. In soccer, you get goalies diving into the post. You get a lot of impact on the ground and knees and elbows. Head to head when you're going up for that header. I remember as a kid, they used to have us throw the ball at each other from about 10, not even 10 feet away, right? And you're heading it back. And of course, the soccer season was usually when it's pretty damp and wet. So you're playing with the old balls that didn't have that like coating on the leather, so they would get really heavy, right? And then like at the end of a practice, your head is just spinning, and you're like, getting those, probably not a full scale concussion, but certainly not what we would call healthy for young brains.
It's true. And I have a funny example. It's really not a funny example. So Cameron Rising, who's a quarterback at
Yep.
Utah. They're in the Rose Bowl. I went with my son who's at Utah. He's a student. And we're at the game, and it's 35-35. Cam gets tackled, hits his head. Looks like a pretty innocuous impact out of the game with a head injury. And I remember telling my son, I'm like, we got to get that guy in a helmet.
Just refresh your screen there. It looks like it jumped out.
Was a quarterback at the University of Utah, quarterback playing in the Rose Bowl a couple years ago, gets tackled, hits his head on the ground, doesn't look like that big of an impact, but he has a head injury and he's out of the game. The Utes go on to lose. His family members, through some race connections of mine, got in touch with us, and not only did Cam end up starting to wear the helmet, the University of Utah was initially a little skeptical about it because it was a new company. Cam wore it for the year, got targeted multiple times, had no issues whatsoever, but it helped him perform better because it was lighter. They were so enthusiastic about how the helmet performed, and I don't know if this has ever happened in the history of sports before, but the family ended up investing in light helmets, and he's been a great ambassador for us. He helped put us on the map, and NCAA teams followed suit. And I think that's what you need to do. Somebody is always the innovator. There was one person that bought that initial Tesla, which was a Lotus with some electric motor in it. And now look at Tesla. And it's the same thing here. And we're going along that path. And with the acceptance that we're seeing right now, we know that it's just a matter of time until this really blows up.
Well, I want to thank both of you for coming on with us on Radio Row today here live at Super Bowl 58 from Mandalay Bay Convention Center. Love the technology, love the belief behind the technology, because for Sports Philanthropy Network, athlete health and safety is one of our core values. And so having something like this that can really transform all of football, right? We know that tackle football in many communities is being phased out, going to flag football. But, I think even in flag football, people are running, people are jumping, people are still going to have it. They may not wear a helmet because you may not be intentionally colliding heads the way you do in tackle football, but you're going to end up with the same type of injuries you have in soccer.
That's true. And our goal is to make it feasible for kids to play, for parents to want them to play. Flag football and football are part of the solution. I said this yesterday in a presentation, may be controversial to some, but nobody cares if you're African American, Polynesian, Armenian. When you're in a huddle and it's 3rd and 12, everybody walks up the line of scrimmage and you're trying to accomplish that goal. And football is such a great sport in terms of grit, determination, goal setting. We need to support it. Teamwork. There's 5.4 million kids playing football. This weekend, we're going to see 106 of the best playing. The 5.4 million pushes the cream of the crop up to the top, and that's why it's such a celebration when we watch this game. I get chills every time I've been to the Super Bowl, listen to the national anthem, and now we're a part of that. Only in America, could two Armenian guys be sitting here at a Super Bowl with a 3.5-pound football helmet that we bought from a race car guy and be talking to you about this. But that's what's great about America. But we care about the kids. My kid wears this helmet. Jeff Garcia's kids wear this helmet. It's an interesting space, and we're going to continue pushing and forcing our competition to innovate.
Well, Nick, John, thank you so much for joining us here. We appreciate your time. For all of our viewers and listeners, we appreciate you jumping on with Sports Philanthropy Network. I'm Roy Kessel signing off, reminding you to live generously.
Thanks, Roy.
Thanks,
Thank you.